This is Kenny Burke. My name's Don Perry. We're both members of the Anderson Township Historical Society, and today we're on a brief cemetery tour of some of the older cemeteries here in Anderson Township. We're doing this as part of the 225th anniversary of our township. To start off and give you a little history of this cemetery, we're right on Bridges Lane next to Clough Pike. This church was started in 1802. They paid $3 for the land, an acre and a half, and started burying people up on top of the hill in about 1809. Originally there was a church, stone church, built over here in the corner. The first one burnt down, it was brick. The second was built in about 1820 and lasted till the church dissolved in 1839.
My reason for being here is a little bit more personable, this particular cemetery, because many of my pioneer ancestors are buried here. The Noble family, Merrill, and Woodruff, which are all pretty big names in the township. This is a particular tombstone of my great-great-great-great-grandparents, Samuel Merrill, and he married Martha Noble. What's interesting about that is Martha Noble was born in the old log house on Clough Pike, which is purchased by the Anderson Township Historical Society many years ago. So she was born actually in the house in 1829. Her parents moved in at least by 1826, and they lived there till 1866. So many of the family members were buried here in the cemetery. I had repaired the cemetery tombstone here a long time ago because, like many of the old tombstones, they're cracked or broken or were damaged by vandalism, but there's a concrete rim around here, a cement rim, and that's held for at least 40 years ago I put this thing together. And many of the other tombstones in here have disappeared through time. In 1936, the Daughters of the American Revolution actually came here and they read all the tombstones and recorded them for their members so they could trace their family histories. But in 1976, about then, our Hamilton County Genealogical Society read all the tombstones again, and many of those tombstones were missing. So what I did as a project, along with a few of my friends, we put lengths of string from that end to that end of the cemetery, 3 foot apart, and then I had a long pole with a long metal rod on it, and I went and covered every square few inches of the cemetery looking for stones because they fall down, they become more and more buried, and then sometime they disappear. So I had found 36 new stones that had been missing during that time period.
Kenny isn't the only one that has relatives buried here.
That's right.
James Clark is buried way up in the corner of the cemetery. He and his brother-in-law negotiated and purchased the land from David Kelly in 1802, as I mentioned, for $3. The justice of the peace that witnessed the transfer was Ichabod Benton Miller of the Stone House down below. So there's a lot of tie-ins, obviously, between this cemetery and this old church and our historic district down here.
And again, this is the Clough Baptist Church, as Don had said. It was built early, but more likely before that, they met in family homes and so forth until they were able to get a big enough congregation or money to build their own church. And this church was built right over here, which we're going to talk about in a minute.
As mentioned, the church was started in 1802. A brick building was built. It burned in 1820. A stone building was built thereafter, and it operated as a church until 1839 when the church dissolved for some reason. We have pictures in our files of the students from the Clough School over here in front of the church after it had been abandoned. And coincidentally, in 1864, the founders of the Clough, what is now Clough United Methodist Church, started meeting here in the abandoned church. They met here until about 1874. Most of the remaining stones from the original church were removed about 1952 and are now used as the entryway to a United Methodist Church down in California. Jenny?
So you can see the big empty area. We're at one end of the cemetery, and there was a large church right here. It was pretty big, but the interesting thing is when they tore it down, they only tore it down to just below the ground level. So in August, when it's really, really hot and the ground is really dry, you can see the entire outline of the church exactly where it was. So that's very interesting.
Okay, this is our second stop on our cemetery tour. It's not quite as old a cemetery. It was first started in 1864. And if you look down the way, it's still active, though not very. The land was purchased by the Clough United Brethren Church from Godfrey Wolfangle. This is the back of his farm. And this end is the oldest. This happens to be Godfrey's monument, as well as his wife and two of his sons. And to be very honest, I'm surrounded by relatives here. It's one of those places that you don't come very often, and fortunately the township is doing a wonderful job of maintaining it.
So if you are looking for your ancestors and they're in Anderson Township or anywhere in Hamilton County, the Hamilton County Genealogical Society since 1971 has been doing books on all the different townships. All the townships are now completed, including many of the Cincinnati cemeteries. And that's called the Hamilton County Burial Records. This is volume 2 for Anderson Township. That's located at the Anderson Library. Also 3 other libraries in the county plus downtown. And if you don't know, the downtown public library is the 5th largest genealogy library in the world. So this is a great place in Cincinnati to trace your family history. Okay, we're at the 5 Mile Chapel Cemetery, and the 5 Mile Chapel is right behind us. This is the founder of the church, Jacob Markley. He and his brother Henry. They were actually German. That's what makes this church a little unique, is that the entire area was called Sweet Wine, and they grew wine on the sides of the hills. And this is the United Brethren Church, and that's a German church. So he donated the land, and then all his neighbors helped build the church in 1844. And then, of course, they started burying around the church, which was quite common. But some of the burials are actually before the church was built, so it was a burial ground initially, and that's where they built the church. Now, my Matthews family came here, and they were the ones that helped build the church also. They arrived on July the 4th of 1811 at the foot of the hill, the foot of 7 Mile Hill, and came up the hill, and they lived right at the corner of Asbury and Ayers. But while they went here for several years, there's only one Matthews in the cemetery, and that's the first wife of one of my great uncles, and they're right over there. The last burial in this cemetery was a Muttersbach in 1950.